Hello everyone, welcome to Azad Revenge Stories channel. You know, there are 36 different ways your career can die. And my manager, Bethany, just finished reading every single one to me like she was reciting my funeral arrangements. I'm sitting in her office on that Tuesday morning, watching her flip through 3 pages of typed complaints about my work, her manicured finger pointing at each line like she's conducting an orchestra of my failures. "Iris, this is your final warning," she says, not even looking up from her little manifesto. "One more mistake and you're done. I have enough ammunition here to destroy any future you think you might have in this industry. My name is Iris Chen Martinez. I'm 28 years old, and until that moment, I thought I understood what powerlessness felt like. I was wrong. Real powerlessness is sitting there nodding apologetically while someone threatens to demolish everything you've built, knowing they have no idea they are actually threatening to destroy their own foundation. Let me pause for a moment here, because I need you to understand something before I continue. Before I go any further, could you please take a few seconds to tell me in the comments where you're watching this from? Because I want to know how far my story has reached. And honestly, I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if you could hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one, it would mean everything to me. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. So, there I am 3 years into my job as a financial analyst at this mid-sized consulting firm, listening to Bethany catalog every time I allegedly disappointed her expectations. "Your client presentations lack polish," she reads. "Your research methodology needs improvement. Your communication skills require development." 26 more items just like that, each one designed to make me feel smaller than the last. What she doesn't know, what she has never known, is that for 3 years, I have been the invisible architect of every success she's ever claimed. You see, Bethany built her reputation as the miracle worker who could save any failing client relationship. The executives upstairs called her the golden touch. Clients requested her specifically. She had this whole image of being this strategic genius who could walk into any crisis and emerge victorious. But here's the thing nobody understood. Bethany couldn't strategize her way out of a paper bag if her life depended on it. Every brilliant solution she presented to senior management. I conceived it during my supposedly routine client research, staying late into the night analyzing market trends and competitor behaviors while she was at networking events taking credit for work she'd never seen. Every crisis she heroically resolved. I had already identified the problems and the fixes, and spent hours crafting casual observations during team meetings so she could present them as her own insights. Remember Hudson Enterprises, that massive manufacturing client who was about to fire us last year? Bethany got a company-wide email celebration for saving that relationship. What really happened was I spent 6 weeks building a personal rapport with their operations director, understanding their actual needs instead of just pushing our standard consulting package. I developed a completely customized approach that addressed their specific pain points, then fed it to Bethany piece by piece through carefully worded suggestions that made her think she was having brilliant realizations. Or what about the Apex financial crisis 2 months ago? Bethany supposedly had this incredible breakthrough that saved them millions in operational costs. The truth, I had been tracking their spending patterns for months, noticed the inefficiencies in their procurement process, and designed a complete restructuring plan. Then I spent 3 strategy sessions with Bethany, guiding her through my findings with phrases like, "I wonder if we've considered, and what if we looked at it from this angle," until she believed she discovered everything herself. The most frustrating part wasn't even that she took credit. It was how she simultaneously made me feel incompetent while building her career on my work. Every time I'd present an idea directly, she'd find ways to dismiss it, then somehow arrive at the same conclusion days later and present it as her own breakthrough. She had this talent for making me doubt my own abilities while secretly depending on them completely. But that Tuesday morning, listening to her 36 reasons why I was supposedly failing, something shifted inside me. Maybe it was the way she kept emphasizing how generous she was being by giving me another chance. Maybe it was realizing that she actually believed her own mythology. Or maybe it was the growing understanding that I had more power in this situation than either of us realized. "I understand completely," I told her, my voice steady despite the earthquake happening in my chest. "I really appreciate you taking the time to help me improve. I promise I'll do better." She smiled then, this satisfied expression like she just completed some important managerial duty. "Good. I'm glad we had this conversation, Iris. I really do want to see you succeed here." What she didn't realize was that I'd already been documenting everything for months, not because I was planning some elaborate revenge scheme. Honestly, I was just trying to protect myself. When someone constantly criticizes your work while depending on it completely, you start keeping records. Every late-night strategy session where I guided her towards solutions. Every client relationship I'd built that she claimed as her own. Every innovative approach that somehow became her idea. I had emails timestamped at 2 in the morning showing my research findings. I had meeting notes where my suggestions were recorded hours before she presented them as her insights. I had client communications where people specifically praised the brilliant analyst who really understands our needs. Messages they sent to her but were clearly about me. Most importantly, I had something she didn't know existed: direct requests from 3 major clients asking specifically to work with me. See, here's what happens when you actually do the work instead of just taking credit for it. People notice. Hudson Enterprises had been sending subtle inquiries about having me lead their next project. The Apex financial team had specifically requested my involvement in their upcoming expansion consultation. And there was this massive potential client, Meridian Industries, worth millions to our firm, who had made it clear through back-channel communications that they wanted to work with the analyst who had delivered such impressive results for their industry contacts. But Bethany never shared these requests with me. She just kept scheduling herself for all the meetings while assigning me to handle the preliminary research, the actual work that made her look good. Walking back to my desk after that meeting, I realized something that probably should have been obvious years earlier. I didn't need her permission to be successful. I didn't need her approval to do excellent work. And I certainly didn't need her protection from career destruction when I was the one keeping her career alive. So I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to stop being her invisible foundation and see what happened when she had to stand on her own. The first thing I did was stop working late. No more staying until 9:00 p.m. to perfect research that she'd present as her own the next morning. No more weekend strategy sessions disguised as helping her prepare for client meetings. When she asked me to review her presentations, I'd give polite but generic feedback instead of the detailed improvements that used to transform her mediocre ideas into winning proposals. Within a week, I could see the cracks forming. Her next client presentation to Hudson Enterprises lacked the deep insights they'd come to expect. Instead of the customized strategic recommendations I usually provided, she delivered generic consulting talking points that anyone could have pulled from a business textbook. Hudson's operations director sent a polite but notably cooler follow-up email asking if there were additional analytical resources that might be available for their next phase. The Apex financial check-in meeting was even more telling when they asked specific questions about implementation timelines and potential risk mitigation strategies, the kind of detailed operational planning I always helped her anticipate. She gave vague responses about developing comprehensive solutions and leveraging best practices. I watched from the back of the conference room as their executives exchanged those subtle glances that mean, "This isn't what we expected." But the real test was coming. The Meridian Industries proposal. This was the big one. The potential contract that could define our firm's next 2 years. Bethany had been positioning herself as the lead consultant for months, completely unaware that Meridian had specifically requested my involvement after hearing about my work through industry connections. 2 weeks after our 36 Reasons meeting, Bethany called me into her office again. This time, she looked stressed instead of smugly confident. "Iris, I need you to help me prepare for the Meridian presentation next week. This is a huge opportunity for our team, and I want to make sure we're bringing our absolute best work." Our best work, her presentation, my preparation. Of course, I said, what specific areas would you like me to focus on? Well, everything really. Market analysis, competitive landscape, implementation strategies. The comprehensive approach that makes us stand out. The comprehensive approach that I had pioneered, and she had been claiming credit for. I'll see what I can put together, I told her. What I put together was a basic market overview that any first-year analyst could have compiled. Clean, professional, completely unremarkable. No innovative insights, no creative solutions, no deep understanding of Meridian's unique challenges, just competent, forgettable consulting work. Meanwhile, I did something I'd never done before. I responded directly to Meridian's back-channel inquiries. When Trevor Hudson from Hudson Enterprises called asking if I might be available for some independent strategic consultation, I didn't immediately defer to Bethany like I'd always had before. Instead, I listened as he explained that several industry contacts had recommended my analytical approach and his company was interested in exploring options for direct collaboration. I appreciate the interest. I told him, let me look into what might be possible. 3 days before the Meridian presentation, something beautiful happened. I was at my desk reviewing quarterly reports when my email chimed with a message from Beffy's assistant asking me to come to the executive conference room immediately. Not Beffy's office, the executive conference room where senior partners held important meetings. When I walked in, I found Bethany sitting across from 3 senior partners, looking like she'd just been told her career was terminal. "Iris, please sit down," said Patricia Reeves, our managing partner. "We've been having an interesting conversation about your contributions to the firm." Beffy's face was completely neutral, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "We've been contacted directly by several clients expressing interest in working with you specifically." Patricia continued, "Hudson Enterprises, Apex Financial, and most significantly Meridian Industries. They've all made it clear that they view you as a key strategic resource." I glanced at Bethany, whose carefully constructed composure was starting to crack around the edges. "Additionally," Patricia went on, "we've been reviewing project outcomes and noticed some interesting patterns. Your direct involvement seems to correlate strongly with client satisfaction and project success rates. We'd like to understand your perspective on why that might be." This was it, the moment where everything I'd been building toward for 3 years was about to become visible. But here's the thing about revenge that nobody tells you. The most powerful version doesn't require you to destroy anyone. Sometimes it just requires you to stop hiding your own value. I think I said carefully that I've been fortunate to work closely with clients and really understand their specific needs. I tend to spend a lot of time on research and relationship building, which probably helps create more targeted solutions. Patricia nodded. That aligns with what we've been hearing. In fact, Meridian Industries has specifically requested that you lead their consultation, not just support it. The silence in that room was deafening. I could practically hear Beffy's world reshaping itself around this new reality. "We'd like to offer you a promotion," Patricia continued. "Senior analyst with direct client management responsibilities, your own accounts, your own team, reporting directly to the partner level." I looked at Bethany one more time. She was staring at the table, probably calculating how much of her success was about to walk out the door with me. "I would be honored to accept," I said. What happened next was the most beautiful part of all. As word spread through the office about my promotion, people started approaching me with a question that revealed everything. "How long have you been doing strategic work? I thought you were just doing research support." Just doing research support. Just feeding brilliant ideas to someone who could present them properly. Just building relationships with clients who somehow never connected my name to the solutions they valued. The Meridian presentation happened as scheduled, but with a significant change in leadership. I presented the comprehensive strategic analysis I'd actually been developing for weeks, not the basic overview I'd given Bethany. Meridian signed a 2-year contract worth more than any single deal our firm had ever closed. Bethany kept her job, but her role shifted dramatically. Without access to my invisible support system, her performance returned to its actual level. Competent, but unremarkable. No more miracle saves. No more innovative breakthroughs. just solid middle management consulting work. The 36 reasons why I supposedly wasn't meeting expectations became irrelevant overnight, replaced by a single reason why I was exactly where I belonged. I had always been doing the work that mattered. 6 months later, Bethany requested a transfer to our regional office. She cited wanting new challenges and growth opportunities, but everyone understood what had really happened. She couldn't rebuild her reputation in a place where people now knew the source of her previous success. I never gloated. I never exposed her. I never even mentioned those 3 years of invisible contribution. I simply stepped into the light that had always been mine and let the work speak for itself. Because sometimes the most devastating revenge isn't destroying someone's career, it's just finally claiming your own. The most satisfying moment came almost a year later when I received an industry recognition award for innovative strategic consulting. At the ceremony, Hudson Enterprises operations director approached me and said something I'll never forget. I'd always knew there was someone brilliant behind those breakthrough solutions. I'm so glad we finally get to work with you directly. He had no idea he was describing the last 3 years of my professional life. Standing there holding that award, I realized that Bethany had actually done me a favor with her. 36 reasons for why I wasn't good enough. She forced me to stop hiding behind someone else's recognition and start claiming the success that had always been mine. The threat to drop bombs on my career became the catalyst for me to discover that I had been the real weapon all along. But here's what I didn't expect about finally stepping into my own power. It changes everything about how you see the world, and not all of those changes feel good. 3 months after my promotion, I was sitting in my new office. Yes, my own office with actual windows when I got a call that made my stomach twist in ways I wasn't prepared for. Iris, this is Monica from HR. Could you come down here for a moment? We have someone who'd like to speak with you. When I walked into the HR office, I found a young woman who couldn't have been older than 24, sitting across from Monica with red-rimmed eyes and a manila folder clutched in her hands. Iris, this is Jessica Walsh. She's a financial analyst who recently joined Bethy's team in the regional office. The moment Jessica looked up at me, I knew exactly why she was there. I heard about what happened with you, and Bethany, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, about how you got promoted and she transferred. I was wondering if you might help me understand something. She opened her folder and pulled out a list. Not 36 items this time, but close enough. She gave me this last week. 28 reasons why my work isn't meeting expectations. She says I lack strategic thinking and that I need to improve my client relationship skills. But the thing is, Jessica's voice cracked slightly. I've been doing all the research for her presentations. I've been the one building relationships with the new clients. And yesterday, I overheard her on a call taking credit for a solution I developed for the Morrison Group account. Looking at this girl, because that's what she was really, someone young and eager and brilliant who was getting her confidence systematically destroyed, I felt something I hadn't expected. Guilt. Not guilt for what I'd done to Bethany, but guilt for what I hadn't done. See, when I finally escaped Betty's manipulation, I thought my story was over. I thought walking away and claiming my own success was enough. I never considered that she might just find someone else to exploit the same way she'd exploited me. Jessica, I said carefully, how long have you been working with Bethany? 8 months. She hired me specifically because she said she needed someone with strong analytical skills to support her client strategy work. Support her client strategy work. The same phrase she'd used when she hired me. I realized something that made my chest feel tight. I hadn't actually stopped Bethany from being a predator. I just forced her to find new prey. Tell me about the Morrison Group situation, I said. For the next hour, Jessica walked me through a pattern that felt sickeningly familiar. Bethany assigning her routine research that required strategic thinking and creative problem solving. Bethany scheduling client meetings that Jessica wasn't invited to, despite having done all the preparation work. Bethany presenting Jessica's insights as collaborative efforts where Jessica's role was somehow always minimized. But there was something even worse happening here. Bethany had learned from our experience. She was being more careful now, more systematic about isolating Jessica and controlling the narrative around her contributions. She told me that you were a cautionary example, Jessica said quietly. She said you had potential, but that you developed an ego problem and started taking credit for team efforts. She said that's why you had to be managed so carefully, and that she hoped I wouldn't make the same mistakes. The audacity was breathtaking. Bethany had turned my success story into a warning tale to keep her new victim in line. Jessica, I said, feeling a responsibility I'd never anticipated. Can I ask you something? Do you have documentation of your work? Emails, drafts, meeting notes, some why? Because I think you need to understand something important about your situation and about Bethany. Over the next 2 hours, I shared my story with Jessica. Not the cleaned-up version I'd told myself about simply claiming my own success, but the real version about systematic manipulation and psychological warfare disguised as management. I showed her how to document everything, how to timestamp her contributions, how to build relationships with clients that couldn't be intercepted or redirected. Most importantly, I helped her understand that her instincts about being exploited weren't paranoia or ego. They were accurate assessments of what was actually happening. The thing about people like Bethany, I told her, is that they can't create value themselves, so they have to extract it from others. But they are also usually smart enough to learn from their mistakes. She's probably going to be more careful with you than she was with me. So what do? You do what I should have done 3 years earlier. You stop enabling the theft of your own work. But here's where my revenge story gets complicated. Because helping Jessica meant confronting something I'd been avoiding, my own responsibility in what had happened. For 3 years, I'd enabled Bethy's behavior by being the perfect victim. I'd made it easy for her to exploit me by never pushing back, never demanding credit, never questioning the dynamic that kept me invisible. I told myself I was being professional and collaborative, but really I was being complicit in my own exploitation. And now she was doing the same thing to someone else. Someone young enough to be even more vulnerable to the manipulation than I'd been. 2 weeks later, Jessica came to see me again, but this time she looked different. Confident, determined. I took your advice, she said. I stopped giving Bethany my research until after I'd presented it to the clients myself. I started scheduling my own follow-up meetings with the Morrison Group, and I documented everything. How did she react? Exactly like you said she would. She's furious. She accused me of being insubordinate and threatened to write me up for overstepping my role. But here's the thing. Morrison Group specifically requested me for their next project phase. They said they were impressed with my direct communication and strategic insights. I felt this surge of pride mixed with something darker. Satisfaction that Bethy's pattern was finally being disrupted by someone who hadn't waited 3 years to fight back. There's something else. Jessica continued. I've been talking to other people in the regional office. Turns out there were 2 other analysts before me who transferred out after working with Bethany. Both cited similar issues, feeling like their contributions weren't being recognized, struggling with confidence, questioning their own abilities. The scope of what Bethany had been doing was bigger than I'd realized. I wasn't just her victim. I was part of a pattern that stretched back years and would probably continue into the future unless someone stopped it. Jessica, what are you planning to do with this information? I'm not sure yet, but I think other people deserve to know what's really been happening. 3 months later, I got another call from HR, but this time it was about Bethy's resignation from the company. Apparently, Jessica had done something I'd never been brave enough to do. She'd filed a formal complaint documenting the pattern of credit theft and psychological manipulation. But she hadn't stopped there. She'd reached out to the other analysts who'd worked with Bethany and helped them understand what they'd experienced. The investigation that followed revealed a systematic pattern of behavior that went far beyond poor management. Bethany had been claiming credit for other people's work for years, creating hostile work environments for talented analysts and driving away valuable employees through psychological manipulation. The company didn't just ask for her resignation. They restructured their entire approach to project attribution and analyst development to prevent similar situations in the future. But the most powerful part of Jessica's approach was something I never would have thought of. She made it about protecting future victims, not just seeking justice for past ones. I didn't want this to happen to someone else, she told me when it was all over. And I realized that staying silent wasn't protecting me. It was protecting her. Sitting in my office that day, looking out my windows at the city below, I understood something about revenge that I'd missed the first time around. My version of revenge had been personal and private. I'd escaped my situation and found success, but I'd left the system that enabled Bethy's behavior completely intact. I'd gotten justice for myself without preventing injustice for others. Jessica's version had been systemic and public. She'd not only claimed her own value, but created changes that would protect people she'd never meet from experiencing what we'd both endured. 6 months later, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I left the consulting firm, not because I was unhappy. Actually, I'd never been more successful or professionally satisfied, but because I'd realized that my real calling wasn't just being good at strategic analysis. It was helping other people recognize and claim their own value before they spent years making other people look brilliant. I started my own consulting practice focused specifically on helping companies identify and develop undervalued analytical talent. My first major client, Meridian Industries, who hired me to audit their internal consulting relationships and ensure they were actually working with the people creating the value they were paying for. The work was incredibly satisfying, but it also opened my eyes to how widespread this problem really was. Bethany wasn't some uniquely manipulative monster. She was part of a system that rewards people who can claim credit more than people who can create value. In my first year of independent consulting, I worked with 12 different companies and found some version of the Bethany dynamic in 9 of them. Brilliant analysts buried under managers who couldn't strategize their way out of basic planning meetings. Creative problem solvers whose innovations were being repackaged and presented by supervisors who'd never had an original insight in their careers. But I also found something that gave me hope. Most of these situations could be changed once the right people understood what was actually happening. The most rewarding case was a tech company, where I discovered an entire team of software developers whose innovations were being claimed by their department head. Within 6 months of my consultation, 3 of those developers had been promoted to senior positions. The department head had been transferred to a role that matched his actual capabilities, and the company's development productivity had increased by 40%. Today, 4 years after that Tuesday morning when Bethany read me 36 reasons why I wasn't good enough, I run a practice that's helped more than 60 people claim recognition for work they were already doing brilliantly. Some of them were in situations exactly like mine. Invisible architects whose managers were building careers on their foundations. Others were dealing with different versions of the same problem. Teammates who stole ideas, supervisors who minimized contributions, or organizational systems that rewarded presentation skills over actual competence. But here's what I've learned that I want you to understand. The most effective revenge against people who try to make you small isn't destroying them. It's refusing to stay small yourself and then helping other people do the same thing. Jessica, who's now a senior analyst at a different firm, calls me every few months to update me on her career and to ask advice about helping junior colleagues who remind her of herself 4 years ago. She's become someone who actively looks for hidden talent and makes sure it gets recognized. That's the real victory. Not just escaping exploitation, but creating a world where fewer people have to experience it in the first place. Last month, I got an email that made everything feel complete. It was from a young financial analyst named David, who works at a firm where I'd done a consultation 2 years earlier. "Dear Iris," it read, "I'm not sure if you remember me, but you helped expose a situation at our company where my manager was taking credit for my research work. I wanted you to know that I was just promoted to senior analyst, and my first decision was to completely restructure how we handle project attribution. I also started mentoring new hires to help them understand their value from day one instead of waiting years to figure it out like I did. Thank you for showing me that claiming my own work wasn't selfish. It was necessary." Reading that email, I realized that my story with Bethany had never really been about her at all. It was about learning to value myself enough to insist that others value me too, and then teaching other people to do the same thing. So here's what I want you to understand. Whoever you are watching this, if you're in a situation where someone is making you doubt your own abilities while secretly depending on them, you're not imagining it. If you're doing brilliant work that somehow becomes someone else's success story, that's not normal professional collaboration. That's exploitation. You don't have to wait 3 years like I did. You don't have to build someone else's career on the foundation of your own hidden talent. And you definitely don't have to accept someone's 36 reasons why you're not good enough when you're the one making them look good in the first place. Document everything. Build relationships directly. Stop making other people look brilliant at your own expense. And when you finally step into the recognition you deserve, reach back and help the next person who's trapped in the same invisible prison you escaped from. Because the most beautiful revenge against people who try to keep you small isn't just becoming big yourself. It's making sure they never get to do the same thing to anyone else. If this story meant something to you, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to stay invisible. And remember, you might be the real weapon in someone else's success story, but that means all the power was always yours to claim. The only question is whether you're ready to stop hiding it. I invite you to subscribe to the Azad Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and support me further by hitting the hype button so the story in this video can be heard by many more people. Thanks to all.